Welcome to the Women and Wealth podcast with Esther Szabo. Esther is a respected leader in the field of personal financial advice with over 25 years of experience. After going through her own significant and challenging life-changing events, she overcame fear and self-doubt to launch her own successful advisory firm. Now Esther is ready to share her practical and personal experiences to help other women clear their hurdles and brave life's transitions. In this way, she inspires women to lead fulfilling and confident lives.
Hello and welcome to Women in Wealth with Esther Szabo from Gates Pass Advisors. Today, Esther has a guest. Good morning, Esther. How are you?
Hi there, Eric. Oh, it's wonderful. It's early fall here. I always feel like I give a weather report at the beginning of this, but I'm doing very well. I worked out this morning and I feel good. And our guest is the person I worked out with.
Nice. And can I introduce him?
Please do.
Fantastic. Our guest today is Dr. Tim Haun. Dr. Haun is a doctor of chiropractic and a certified exercise physiologist. He's been working in the health field since the early 80s and attained his Doctor of Chiropractic degree in 1987. He is a chiropractor, personal trainer, and previously has taught Tai Chi and has even been on an amateur dance team, which I'm very interested to hear all about on the podcast today. Recently, he has also been working in the field of chronic pain management, as well as providing corporate chiropractic care. Well, that's a mouthful. Tim, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Definitely.
I was joking about the whole, hearing all about the amateur dance team. I am really, really interested in the chronic pain management, and I know that Esther said that she worked out with you this morning. Did you work her hard?
Today, she didn't want to work out very hard. So
Why should it be different than any other day?
Truth.
no, she worked out hard this morning. Yes.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Esther, you've known Tim for a very long time, I hear. How did you guys meet?
Well, I met Tim at the gym that I continue to work at, that he's been working out of there for, I've known Tim for close to 25 years, and he was at that gym how many years before that?
Yeah, 1983 is when I started there.
Yeah, so 12, 13 years before that. And I just had heard that Tim was really excellent as a trainer because he was so familiar with how the body worked, how muscles work, how not to injure oneself. And that's been really true because I'll tell you a secret, Eric, I don't like to exercise.
I knew I liked you, Esther. I'm right there with you.
I just appreciate the benefits. And Tim is very good at just being encouraging in a very quiet way, just to keep encouraging one to keep moving forward. So I'm really glad to have him on as a guest. And one might say, well, wait a minute, this is Women in Wealth. Why are you having a trainer on? And as you know, Eric, our focus here with Gates Pass Advisors is to help women make really good financial decisions for themselves as they navigate life's ups and downs. Downs could be loss of a spouse, ups could be a new business, promotion, new ideas, exciting changes as well. And Tim has actually seen me through all of these. Wow. And I know that the work that we've done together has helped me be successful through that.
That's fantastic. I'm so looking forward to the interview today. I'm just going to sit back and listen and learn.
Okay, sounds good. So for the audience, the reason also that the reason I brought Tim on is because we talk a lot about decision making. And I know in my own experience with myself, as well as with the clients I've worked with over the years, none of us make good decisions if we're not feeling well, whether it's emotional or physical. So we're going to talk about the physical part today, and especially in this time of COVID. So Tim, can you talk a bit, given the chronic pain management work that you do, what is your definition of chronic pain?
Well, chronic pain, you might think, and we actually talked about this a little beforehand, you might think that chronic pain are these serious people who have had like work comp injuries where they've lost a limb or something or broken something, where chronic pain can be something as simple as you've got some forearm pain from too much work on the computer. So it's not super severe, but it's still considered a chronic pain. So that just a pain that lasts for 2 to 4 months.
Yeah, so anything, even if it's quote unquote I'm just using the word simple pain, but it's the fact that it's still there after a few months.
Right. And it's not necessarily debilitating, but it does affect you.
And how are the ways that it affects people?
Well, they're physically, so if you're, let's say, I'm going to use typing as an example, because that's what we use a lot in the Valley here. And so it might be wrist pain or forearm pain that when you're typing along, you can only do so much typing before you have to stop because it's painful, or at the end of the day, you're just in so much pain that, you can't really function with your hands afterwards. Yeah.
Yeah, I know I've had this thing recently, even just last week. I was on vacation last week, and I got this crazy stiffness in my forearm, which is on my typing arm, that all of a sudden it just felt completely like locked for a moment. Is it that kind of thing?
Well, first of all, there is no typing arm. You're using both of them.
You don't know how
typing.
I type.
Oh, maybe you're right. If you're hunting and pecking, then it's one arm. Yeah.
In fact, though. My dominant arm, I will say. My
Your dominant arm.
The
Okay.
hand that's attached to my dominant arm.
Yeah. And did you have a question there?
No, but it's just things that happen that may not seem to be, that
Very
obvious.
significant. Yeah. Yeah. But pain, one of the things we don't realize about pain is that when you're feeling pain, there are nerves going all the way up to your brain, and it is taking space. It is taking energy. And you don't notice it usually until the pain is really severe, but it does affect your cognition, how your brain is functioning. So it'll take away some of your ability to decision make, let's say. You might become a little more forgetful when you've got pain. So definitely affects decision making.
Yeah, and does it, when you say forgetful, is that like you can get into brain fog?
It could be something as simple as brain fog, or some of the people I work with are in such pain, I'll tell them something, and then 5 or 10 minutes later, they'll have to ask me again because they don't remember it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just stop talking about me.
No,
Okay.
no, you're not that bad yet.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, I like the yet. So, and also we're in this time of COVID where gyms have shut down, and I noticed that. Like, I didn't come to the gym for, I don't know, probably about 5 months, and we had been in a very regular regimen for years of regular times of the week that I would be there. And I know I'm not the only one. How has the COVID impact of being shut down, shut in, impacted chronic pain?
So it's kind of interesting. There have been a few different things that are happening with people. One of them, let's take your example. So some people who are working out really regularly, they're not working out as much now, so their pains are usually increasing because they're sitting at the computer a little more. I know that some jobs are actually busier now at the computer than they used to be before.
Absolutely, 110%.
Yeah.
We are all shocked, like, oh my God, there is so much more now to do.
Yeah, so we're getting these repetitive stress injuries that involve the wrists, hands, forearms, shoulders, neck, and all those type of things. Now, on the flip side, there are some people who have used this as an opportunity. They've got a little more, ability to decide what to do when. So they actually have started to work out more. So they'll go out, take walks more, stretch a little more. So it's kind of this kind of dichotomy where some people are doing less and some people are doing more. So some people are in better shape and some people are in worse shape.
Mm-hmm. I noticed with me, not that this is all about me, but it's the example, that at the beginning of COVID, I was doing more walking. I was getting out there more. I was adjusting. And then as it seems like there's like this COVID fatigue where that dropped off until I started coming back to the gym. Have you noticed anything like that?
Yeah, some people are changing what's going on as it goes along. There's this thing that I heard, Zoom fatigue. Mm-hmm. So apparently these meetings, I'm not in a whole lot of meetings, so I don't see how this is, but some people are in back-to-back meetings and they're getting Zoom fatigue. It's just like at the end of the day, they just don't feel like doing anything because they're just so fatigued dealing with looking at a screen and listening hard because sometimes the connections aren't good. And various things like that.
Yeah, the audience, you can't see me, but I'm nodding my head up and down quite vigorously.
Yeah.
And I know that those in my audience could also relate to this. When we talked earlier, you mentioned some interesting statistics about how our work world has changed and evolved over the past few hundred years as we've gone from an agrarian to a technical society for work. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. The reason we were starting to talk about that is exactly that, because what we used to do is not what we do now, and our bodies were more used to doing what we were doing before, and now we've got all these conveniences, so we're not, having to ride in our carriage to the market, which was actually a physical activity. And they did some studies, and in order for us to get the same activity that we got 200 or 300 years ago, we would have to run 3 miles a day, not walk 3 miles a day, but run 3 miles a day to equal what we used to do a few hundred years ago.
I mean, that's just amazing to me.
Yeah.
When I feel good about showing up to the gym twice a week for an hour, it's like, oh, it's not getting it.
Yes. And the problem with this is that our bodies have basically deconditioned. We've kind of atrophied from what we used to do. You used to do so many different things that put loads on the body so many different ways that there's a term called anti-fragile. You were conditioned for things. So anything that came up, your body could handle it because you had done a variety of different things, and it conditions the body. Now we mostly sit, unless you've got a labor type job, you're mostly sitting doing the computer, and so a lot of things atrophy, and we're not in shape for a lot of things.
So how do you address that? I mean, here we are in Silicon Valley. I know you've seen this a lot. What are the things that you suggest to people, your clients?
So one thing off of what I had just said was, one thing we don't realize that we're doing repetitive things over and over, basically the same things. This is very similar to what athletes do, right? So a marathon runner runs a marathon, and we are sitting and doing things like typing. I was in an office doing ergonomic evaluations for the office, and this one computer programmer was doing stretches and icing his forearms, and I was saying, wow, that's exactly what you should be doing. And I said, why are you doing this? Or how did you get to be doing this? And he said, a while ago, I realized that I was typing 16 hours a day. And basically, I was running 5 or 6 marathons a day with my fingers. And I said, this is brilliant. This is brilliant, because this guy had the right idea. He was an athlete with his forearms. And like I said, he would stretch and do some exercises and ice it. And unfortunately, a lot of us are athletes, but we don't know it. And so we go and we do our athletic event every single day, and we break the body down, but we don't do anything to stretch it out. We don't eat right. We don't, recuperate right, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
And there's a lot of, I'm going to just tie it back to COVID, because it's a wearying time. All three of us, I'm counting you, Eric, on this as well, and listeners, how weary are we of the environment that we're in, whether it is the news, the election news, the change, the uncertainty, definitely uncertainty about finances, future, all of that. You're so encouraging, Tim. That's one of your key characteristics. How do you encourage people to make shifts, to think of this more as an athletic event, and take those self-care steps? What are things that you suggest? Well,
the first one is just to let you know that that's going on, right? Because I don't think a lot of people think that way. They think, oh, I'm just doing my work.
Right.
So now that you know that, one of the important things I've learned from the chronic pain sector is there's a concept called pacing. And this is something people naturally do, but when you're doing a repetitive motion, it tends to fall off. And pacing is when you do something until you get tired, and then you switch it and do something else. So you're kind of pacing your energy, you're pacing your body's ability to cope with what you're giving it physically. But like I said, if you're sitting there typing all day long, the loads aren't really high and everything, but it's important for us to start to pace, right? And part of this is going to be taking little breaks. And I know this disrupts productivity when you do take the breaks, but sometimes it'll actually enhance your productivity. So you just have to, you kind of have to do some experimentation with yourself. And unfortunately, previously, when we were, a few hundred years ago, the physical things were thrown at us, right? So this variety was thrown at us. Now there's nothing to give us breaks, right?
So there was just at that time, like with physical work, you say, okay, I've got to chop wood. I'm going to chop wood for X amount of time, and then I stop. And now I've got to haul the wood, but there may be a break in there. Whereas right now, in like my typical work day as many others, you come in and there's a bunch of stuff to do, and then it's like, oh my goodness, there's all this email, and here's somebody who needs this. So it can be. I have found, and I've worked time management for years. I love time management. I'm a calendar addict, all of that. And even then, sometimes it's like I can't afford to take a break because I'm going to miss time to do something else. And I know I'm not alone in this. So that's the kind of thing that you're talking about.
Right, little markers that stop your physical activity, right? The physical activity, even though it's lighter, it can still go on until it's basically too late. And then, just to dovetail off of that, we're talking about pain here. And so if you're going along and you don't really feel pain ever, most of us, I think you'll all agree with this, is most of us will eventually feel pain. And so by the time you're feeling pain, that's when you have to get more aggressive and start to take more and more breaks. So before you're feeling pain is when you actually should start doing some of these like stretching and exercises and start taking care of yourself. Because once you start to feel pain, there's kind of a threshold you go over, and then it takes a lot more to get you out of pain. So, yeah.
So where do you find these exercises and stretching, and how long do you recommend taking the break for, and just a simple program?
Okay, so this pacing can be done on lots of levels. There's macro pacing, micro pacing. So it can be something as simple as taking a break every half hour, or taking a break.
Half hour?
No, every half hour, not for a half hour.
No, I know, but every half hour.
Every half hour.
Goodness.
So that's what some people have to do when they're in pain.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
So when you're... So that would be more of a micro pacing, right? Taking breaks on shorter time schedules, right? If you're not in pain, you can maybe even do something like stretch at the beginning of the day, or stretch at the end of the day, or do little exercises, or whatever it is that you find works for you. And that once you're in pain, you may have to do these stretches on a more regular basis.
And where I have found that the apps are really good for things like stretching. Like you've given me those handouts that are black and white. Eric may have seen some of those where they show you what to do, and I might do it for a day or so. But I find the apps really helpful because there's a person guiding you through it.
Right, and these apps are great. There are very many apps. I know that you're using are we allowed to plug Peloton?
We can say Peloton. I use the Peloton app, which I think is really good.
Yeah, she uses...
Costs money.
Yeah, it costs money. I know the Peloton app, you think of the Peloton bicycle, but they have a lot of other programs in there. I've got a few clients, including Esther here, who was using the Peloton app before she even got a Peloton bike. And I've got some people that don't have the bike, and they're just using some of the exercise programs, or they get on just a regular bike instead of a Peloton and do it. But those have some great stretches, great exercises on it. And these are more general, not specifically for like the forearms or the neck or the shoulders. But there are other resources out there you can just even Google different things for neck stretches or shoulder stretches or forearm stretches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how long do you recommend taking these breaks for? Let's say if you're not feeling pain, and you're going before and after. Oh, you're saying before and after.
Before and after work.
Yeah.
So if you're not feeling pain, you can do that kind of thing. Some people actually feel a benefit when they do it during work, even though they're not feeling pain. Just taking a 30-second break and just taking the joints of your wrists and forearms through a range of motion. That's basically what we're missing, is we're missing this fuller range of motion. So sometimes just doing that, just opening and closing your hands and wrists is enough to kind of unload them for a little while.
That's my favorite kind of exercise right there.
Just opening and closing your hands.
Exactly.
Would this be around a chocolate bar, closing your hand around a chocolate bar?
Shh, don't tell them all my secrets.
Okay.
And then the other thing with COVID is people are working from home more. And how is that impacting?
That's definitely increased the repetitive stress. Like we were saying, people are actually working more sometimes. And so they're getting more wrist, hand, arm. Some people are getting problems because now they're at their kitchen table instead of at an ergonomic table with a desk, no standing option or anything like that. So that's another thing we're dealing with is trying to get their setup ergonomic at home and then giving them these stretches and everything we talked about. Another thing, we were talking about low back. Just getting up and walking across the room and back sometimes is enough to break that cycle of sitting all day long. And if you do that a few times a day, sometimes that'll help keep your low back a little better, in a little better shape.
Yeah. And that is a common thing. I know for me, it's like neck tightness and all of that, and just basic neck stretches, I suppose.
Yes, yeah.
That.
There's some easy neck stretches. Sometimes again, it's just taking the neck through a range of motion. Looking over one shoulder, looking over the other shoulder, head side to side. Just doing that every once in a while is enough to loosen things up.
What we've talked about too is those of us who are, which is most of us, on the computer all day. This thing that you talk about Zoom fatigue, and it's also. It's so easy. It looks like, oh yeah, I can schedule in this Zoom meeting from 10 to 11, this one from 11 to 12, this one from 1:30 to 2:30. And I noticed for myself at the beginning of COVID, I was doing that. And now I can't do that either. I would end up at the end of the day feeling like my eyes were spinning around in my head and I just couldn't. It really impacts focus and concentration, which again comes back to decision making. If it's getting to be the end of the year here right now when we're recording this is the middle of October. And my last podcast was about decision making for the end of the year. We're also, and there are financial decisions that often need to be made about tax planning, about getting prepared for 2021, and making sure that there's cash available to pay for the bills after the holidays. Into January, there's property taxes due. There's all sorts of things. And when we're zapped, it is so easy to let the bills slip, let things happen that way. What are your suggestions? I guess you're talking about this pacing for people to not get so back to back. It is a different energy being on like a Zoom call. You're so focused. There's less of the nonverbal communication. And it's true, you don't have the same sort of body movement, flexibility. It's a very different means. So besides the pacing, is there anything else that you'd suggest so people don't get into almost like, we'll talk a little bit now about like the body mind. There's the physical, but just the mental relief from technology.
Yeah. So one of the things you said, I want to bring back to pacing for just a second. You were saying you were back-to-back Zoom meeting, which is you realized you needed to pace that differently. So you separated it out, which is good. Another thing about Zoom meetings, which a lot of people don't think about, is a lot of times you can turn off the camera for a second in a Zoom meeting, and it's not a real big deal unless you're doing one-on-one Zoom meetings, obviously. But when you turn off the camera, you can actually do some stretches while you're listening to somebody. So you can actually get some physical activity or take a little stretch break while you're still getting work done on Zoom meetings. So
that's a good point. I've seen somebody, and I like that you say turn the camera off, because I've seen people who have like walking a treadmill on their desk, or not on their desk, but under their desk, and they're like doing treadmill walking during the thing, and it is distracting.
Yes, yeah, it's hard. Another thing that helps is larger screens usually are better audio equipment. So if you're trying to strain to hear, that just takes energy, right? And if you're trying to strain to see, that takes energy. So the better equipment you can buy, if you're doing a lot of Zoom meetings and calls, that's going to help you.
And I've also just recently, another colleague who helps people present well on Zoom talked about, because for many of us, we're on a laptop at home, talked about laptop lifters so that you're at a better height.
That's an ergonomic thing. There are videos and little articles online about proper ergonomic setup. So that's important to look at those also.
Yeah. Those are really good resources online.
Yeah.
I'm going to turn it back to you, Eric, real quick, just to see if you have any questions for Tim.
Tim, when you're talking to your clients about this kind of stuff, are they pretty receptive? I mean, it seems fairly simplistic, but I'm terrible at creating good habits.
When you say receptive, everybody is receptive, but it's just, can you do it or not? I think the people who are affected more, like the people who are in more pain, they tend to do it, take it more seriously, just because they are in pain and they see, once they start doing the stretches and everything, they see that they are helping and they know that they have to do them if they want to get out of pain. And unfortunately, that's kind of how people are. Is the worse it gets, the more they'll pay attention to it. So, anyway, I don't know if that answers your question or not.
No, absolutely. And I mean, one of my follow-up questions also was kind of includes Esther in this. I like those hand exercises because I do type all day, and so I'm curious. Do we have like some sort of measurement tool to know what kind of candy bar I should be using for these exercises?
So medium-sized candy bars will fit that. How big are your hands?
Very large. They're
very large. Okay, so you might be a large-sized candy bar. Then.
Yeah,
well, these aren't candy bars.
Size,
I just want to clarify. I do not eat candy bars. I eat very good, high-quality dark chocolate. That is not my husband will also say, "Do you want candy in your lunch?" I'm like, "That is not candy. That is dark chocolate. That is a vitamin." So
that's right.
I just want to be
clear. A vitamin. No,
it's a supplement.
Dr. Haun, this has been fantastic. Esther and I've talked about this before. I don't even think on a podcast necessarily, just in conversation before we get started or after we've been done. With all these different meetings, with all the podcasting that we do, we try to stand as best we can when we do that. I've got a large monitor, so my eyes are not strained, but at the same time, I don't have the ability yet to put that up to standing height. So I sit down a lot still. So that's really frustrating. And I'm going through the process of kind of rearranging my office because, like you said, once somebody kind of feels that pain, they're more eager to do something about it. And that's where I'm at. I'm like, okay, that's enough of that. I'll finally make some changes. And so I don't want to have to wait too long until until I'm in pain constantly. So I love all the hints and tips that you gave today.
Oh, great. Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just want to say, I've shared this on previous podcasts early on, but one of the things that Tim has done for me is after my late husband, David, passed away, and it was just such a really challenging time. And I was going to the gym because I do it. Well, obviously there's two things he's encouraging on. One is my mind, the way it works. Someone says exercise. I'm like, okay, how do I fit it in? 45 minutes every day. And I get over like, I can't do that. And Tim is very good about saying what?
Any movement you can do. So 10 minutes, 5 minutes here and there, 20 minutes. Usually when you start moving, you do a little more than you think you're going to. Yeah. So just any little bit helps.
And he's really right about that. Mm-hmm. I would go, well, no, it doesn't count if it's just 10 minutes, but it's like just getting out and going outside for 10 minutes or whatever is the exercise. It's like, oh my God, this feels so good. I'm so glad I did it. It's just like that weird hump of like the mind saying, no, this is much better. Sitting, standing here, taking care of this is a much better way to go. And it's like saying, thanks, I'll be back, and just getting moving. Tim is very good about modifying the degree, especially for those of us, and I know a lot of my clients are like this. We are those who solve problems, take care of things, are responsible, are leaders. And often, and this is true for women across the board, we tend to put ourselves lower on the list of self-care. We make sure everyone else is set first. And Tim is very good about saying, just get out for 10 minutes. And that's been really true. And then the other thing about what you encouraged me to do, Tim, is after David died, you said, just come to the gym, just hang out. Because I was like, it's so hard to be around people. It's like, ugh. And it's like, you can be around people, but you don't have to talk to anybody. Everyone here knows you, likes you, blah, blah, blah. And it was really good because I could get a sense of community without really saying too much. And that was a really good suggestion. I've shared that before. So thank you so much for being here and everything that you do.
My pleasure. It was
for
great.
People.
Yeah.
Dr. Haun, thanks again. And Esther, of course, thank you so much for bringing him on. It was a fantastic podcast, and I hope that people really found a lot of good information here and they do something about it. So thank you again.
You're very welcome. And I just remember that, as people know, when they work with us at Gates Pass Advisors, to make financial decisions, to consider what are the best investments for them, or how to plan retirement, or just to navigate through a difficult time, our perspective is it's not solely a technical exercise. It involves mind, body, and spirit, and all have to be supported so that we each make the best decisions through challenging as well as super exciting times. If you'd like to learn more about how we work, you can go to our website, gatespassadvisors.com. Click the Contact Us button and send a note over through that. You can use this thing called a telephone, 650-797-0280. We'd love to talk to you.
Fantastic. Thanks again, Esther. And of course, the last thank you goes to the listening audience. Thank you for tuning in and listening to the Women in Wealth podcast with Esther Szabo. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Esther comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it much easier to share these podcasts with your friends and family. Again, thank you so much for listening today. For everyone at Gates Pass Advisors, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.
And now take a break and stretch.
Absolutely. I got to reach for that candy bar. There it is.
Thank you for listening to the Women and Wealth podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you receive notifications of new podcasts as they become available. Check out the website at www.gatespassadvisors.com for more information. This content is developed from sources believed to be providing accurate information. The information in this material is not intended as tax or legal advice. Please consult legal or tax professionals for specific information regarding your individual situation. The opinions expressed and material provided are for general information and should not be considered a solicitation for the purchase or sale of any security.